Bill?
News on the northern edge of Moscow. The verdict is in on behalf of the judge, Brittney Griner, WNBA star. You can see there in jail, in a courtroom right now behind the bars inside the court. The judge has found Brittney Griner guilty of packing cannabis and boarding an airplane or trying to board an airplane in Russia. I do believe we have some translation from Russian to English. Let's drop on there and see if we can hear this.
Союза в рамках Евразес путем прохождения пунктов пропуска зеленый коридор в зоне таможенного контроля Шереметьевской таможни ПТС России, не осуществив при этом таможенного декларирования товаров в письменной форме, тем самым нарушим статью 28 Федерального закона Российской Федерации о наркотических средствах и психотропных веществах от 8 января 1998 года номер 3 ФЗ.
So we don't have the English translation, but in the last hour, Griner addressed the court, issued a long apology, said that Russia started to feel like home to her, and apologized to everybody. She's 31 years old, could face 10 years in jail, and we'll see whether or not there's any leniency on behalf of the judge as we wait on that. Dan Hoffman joined the conversation. You lived in Moscow. What have you observed on this trial as you have watched it?
Well, look, there's no rule of law in Russia, and it's pretty farcical, but it's also a necessary precursor before any sort of a swap could take place. The Russians need to keep up this idea that there's some reciprocity here. You know, Viktor Bout is the merchant of death. He supplied weapons to the FARC, knowing full well that they would commit atrocities against U.S. officials and civilians. There's absolutely no reciprocity, but that's what Vladimir Putin wants his own population and the world to believe. So that's why she was convicted. It remains to be seen whether her lawyer will appeal this, but it's the necessary step before this sort of asymmetric, dirty deal gets done in order to save the lives of our citizens, Paul Whelan and Brittney Griner.
Well, we'll see when that happens. Dana, go ahead and jump in.
Well, I just have a question. Dan, what happened to the possible prisoner swap idea?
It's still absolutely in play, but before it can happen, the Russian government is going to demand that Brittney Griner be convicted so that they can say that she was guilty of this alleged crime. And that's, again, the necessary precursor to make it appear as if these two legal cases are on a par with one another when we know that nothing could be farther from the truth, frankly.
So
but
what you're saying
it's
is,
very typical Russian Potemkin village kind of behavior.
She goes to jail, and then the negotiations begin. That's what you're saying, right, Dan? What do you think about a swap with Viktor Bout?
Well, I think that we don't really have much of another option. You know, it's either allow our U.S. citizens to languish in jail, get sick, perhaps even worse, or make this asymmetric, dirty deal. And I think sometimes you just have to kind of swallow hard and do this. It's the very nature of having to deal with a rogue dictatorship like Vladimir Putin's Russia, tragically.
What would prison look like for her? Is there a different type of prison that she would be in, or are we talking a labor camp? What would it be like?
Well, I've been in some of these places, and they are not particularly, respectful of their prisoners. Certainly, no oversight like we have in the United States. There has to be grave concern, I would think, on the part of the United States government and obviously her family that she would be mistreated in prison. There's lots of reporting about prisoners not being fed adequately, being forced to perform labor tasks that are onerous, and not getting enough sleep. Look at the way that they've treated Alexei Navalny, keeping him awake for hours and on end. It's just another demonstration of the lack of any sort of rule of law in Russia. And frankly, the Russians want us to know this so they can induce us to make the deal that Vladimir Putin very much wants. This would, for him, be a demonstration that he can go toe-to-toe with Russia's main enemy, the United States, in a high-stakes negotiation. And he wants to make it appear as if he can take care of his own, that he will bring back a Russian prisoner from the United States and he'll probably try to deflect from his failure to take care of his own in Ukraine, where tens of thousands of Russian soldiers have been killed.
Dan, I'm just reading some of the wires here. Just a couple bullet headlines here. The court saying that Griner's guilty of drug possession, guilty of smuggling, saying that she committed the crime deliberately. Just on those bullet points alone, I would expect no mercy from this judge.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the judge is, has the leeway to give her 10 years in jail, and I'm sure that that's what will happen. Keep in mind that Victor Bout was arrested in 2008, has served in prison since then, so longer than Brittney Griner would be sentenced. But look, there's nothing more arbitrary than Russia's law. It's kind of set up the way that the Kremlin wants it to be, and this is what we're seeing today.
Do you have a sense of how Putin might be using this case as propaganda within Russia's state media?
Well, again, I think what he wants to demonstrate is that he can take care of Russia's own. It's important for him to do that as for propaganda purposes with his own population. Russians like to say that they don't leave their own behind in war. Well, that's exactly what they're doing. He'll use this case to try to deflect from that in Ukraine, but also he wants to demonstrate to his own inner circle, particularly the Wagner Group mercenaries that are fighting in Ukraine, that he can take care of them for all of their nefarious acts there. Victor Bout is in very much sort of similar circumstances, and Putin wants to show that he'll take care of Russia's own who break the law and serve as merchants of death, as Bout did and as Wagner Group mercenaries do now in Syria and Ukraine. So
bottom line is today is not the end of the story, so we will wait to hear how many years she gets, and then we'll see the follow-on story from there. Dan, great to get your instant analysis. Stand by for us, and we'll get back to you when we get another headline there. Brittney Griner behind the cell there in that courtroom, Dana. It's quite unique for an American audience to see a setup like this. Thank you, Dan, for being here today.